What's up, Savvy Expats? With inflation, the Great Resignation, and the retirement crisis happening in the US, retirement in America is no longer as feasible as it used to be. Social Security and pensions can no longer compete with the ridiculous housing prices, rising food costs, and the inflation Americans face on a daily basis. So what is the solution to this? Do you stay in the burning house and wait it out, or do you move abroad and plan for an early retirement? Well, in today's video, we are diving into planning for your early retirement in the Philippines. And this is speaking from experience, being that my dad is an early retiree, so we decided to make the switch, sell everything, and leave behind our good life in the US for a new life in the Philippines. Alright, without wasting time, let's get into it. So let's start off with the million-dollar question, to stay or to leave? You'll be surprised how much people are seriously debating leaving the US for other countries like the Philippines, but still feel like they have too much to leave behind. And this is no small decision to make. So what should you do? Well, I'm not your advisor, but let's look at the numbers. So starting with inflation, just this past month in January, US inflation has skyrocketed, hitting its highest levels in 40 years. Prices in the US has climbed by over 7.5% in inflation over the past year from 2021 to now. Take a look at this one-year graph and you'll see an upward trend in inflation. I don't think we're going to see any decrease anytime soon. And so with inflation being driven by soaring demand and lack of supply, things don't seem to be too bright from here. Now, I am speaking from a different country now, but from what I've heard, shelves are empty in supermarkets across the US, so lack of supply is right in front of our faces. Savvy expats, here's what I ask from you. Comment down below how the US has changed since the pandemic, and let's get a conversation going. Do you personally see, when you go to the grocery store, empty stock and barren shelves? Do you see prices increasing in your neighborhood? Do you see businesses closing down in your area? I want your honest comments from your personal experience. But I want to show you guys the craziest chart I've seen on US inflation. So just take a look at this chart showing Biden's first year in presidency and the effect it's had on US inflation compared to previous years. The jump in inflation has skyrocketed tremendously. And not to mention, the US in July 2020 has printed more money in that past month than in the past 200 years. And at the start of Biden's presidency, 40% of US dollars in existence were printed within only 1 year. So if these statistics don't make you lose faith in the US dollar, I don't know what will. Now, this isn't to say that you must leave the US, but if your circumstances permit you to do so and you desire to do so, I don't see why not. And aside from the dollar plummeting in value, you also have the Great Resignation. All these things are a recipe for disaster. A record high of 4.5 million Americans quit their jobs in November of 2021 alone, with no signs of slowing down. People aren't working, businesses are getting shut down, and employees are getting laid off. So now we're experiencing historically low unemployment rates. On top of that, America is also going through a retirement crisis. Only 36% of American adults feel that their retirement planning is on track, while a quarter of adults have no retirement savings at all. And 40% of American baby boomers are dependent completely on Social Security alone for retirement. Moreover, 30% of workers now plan to postpone retirement and work longer. So with rising costs and a declining economy, the three legs of retirement for Americans, which are private savings, pensions, and Social Security, will no longer cut it in the US. And I won't even get into the political divisions of both parties and the malice that people have for each other over beliefs and vaccines. The US is unbelievably divided, and the pandemic has only made matters worse. Now, you may have a ton of reasons to stay in the US. There are reasons to still stay there, but these are just a few factors to consider when leaving the US. At least for our family, nothing was holding us back, and we don't see a bright future for America in years to come, so we decided to move. Now let's move on to the topic of early retirement in the Philippines. What should you plan, and when's the best time to move here? Should you wait a couple of years, or should you move here as soon as possible? So when it comes to planning early retirement in the Philippines, the first thing to consider is where you'll live. A lot of you, prior to the pandemic, have been to many places that you enjoyed for vacation. Be it Manila, Cebu, or Davao, you probably had an amazing time and you were itching to come back. But when deciding on where you'll settle down, I highly suggest staying in a place for 1 month, or better yet, a few months. Because you'll find with life on vacation, you come in with the mindset that you're just gonna relax and enjoy your time. But living there, on the contrary, is a different story because you don't come in with that same mindset. Though you may have enjoyed Manila on vacation, you may not enjoy living in Manila long term. So I recommend trying out several places for an extended period of time and finding out which place best suits you. A great rule of thumb for early retirement in the Philippines is also making a list of what you desire in a location. Do you want to be near international grocery stores? Do you want to be near the beach? How close do you plan on being to a hospital? Do you want to live in a house or a condo? What amenities do you want near you? Do you want a fully equipped kitchen? Do you want a pedestrian-friendly place? All of these things should be planned out ahead of time, and if you need help with that, my email is in the link in the description. Not to mention, it will help a lot to talk to local expats in that area to get a feel for the place. Now, when it comes to buying property, if you're a foreigner with a Filipino spouse, then you can buy property under your spouse's name. And if you don't have a Filipino spouse, you're most likely going to rent or stay in a city location where there are condos, because foreigners in the Philippines are allowed to own condos. Another thing to take into consideration is when exactly are you going to retire. Some of you are waiting a couple of years for Social Security and pension, so this should be accounted for too. And by retiring early and getting out of the rat race, I truly believe that's a great way to go. It's hard to be living paycheck to paycheck, worried and anxious. When you get to the Philippines and life here is a bit more slow, you'll find that you'll enjoy life for what it actually is. It's more relaxing, peaceful, and zen. When you're in the US and you're paying $1,200 rent on top of working all the time, you never get any time and money to yourself. But you come here to the Philippines where rent and expenses is substantially lower, you can afford to relax, go out to eat, and enjoy your day. But be sure when you come here you have recurring revenue constantly coming in. Now, one of the best tips that I can give you is to take care of everything you have going on in the US before leaving for the Philippines. Pay off your debt, get your savings in order, and take care of everything that would cause you to come back to the US. You don't want to be in the Philippines physically, but your mind is in the US mentally because you're stressing out on unfinished business in the US. And if you can, it may also help to set up passive income streams before you leave the US to support your lifestyle when you get to the Philippines. Be it a rental property or investments, these are helpful things to have. But make sure you have connections in the US to watch over these things while you're gone. For example, my family, we have a friend that can go into our storage in Illinois and send out anything we need at any time. So this is extremely helpful for us. Now let's move on to the next question. Should you wait a couple of years before moving here, or should you move here as soon as possible? Well, if your circumstances allow you to do so, I recommend that you move here as soon as possible, or at least secure a property here. Because you have to keep in mind that prices aren't getting any cheaper, especially with the Philippines opening back up. The Philippine economy is still recovering from the pandemic, so with the new president being elected and tourism opening back up, prices are going to drive up as well. At least during the height of the pandemic, with tourism closed, people going back to their home country, and financial struggles, the number of vacancies increased, so rental costs and property prices decreased. As you can imagine, with the Philippines returning back to normal, prices are going to continue going up from here. And so this is why now is the best time to move here, or you should at least consider securing a property here before prices skyrocket. And even in our condo complex, there were many POGO workers and employees from China, Japan, Korea, and India. But when the pandemic struck, a lot of these foreigners were laid off and had to leave for their country. Because these people were the drivers of housing costs, when they left due to the pandemic, housing costs went down. So like I said, the opposite is happening right now. Tourism is opening back up to foreigners, the economy is recovering from the pandemic, and people are occupying properties. So with less vacancies now, we're inherently going to see prices increase. And so if you're looking to buy or rent a property, then the best time is now. And you know what they say, the best time to buy was always 10 years ago. People always say, oh, I wish I would have bought into real estate 10 years ago, I'd be rich right now. Or I wish I would have bought Bitcoin back when it was at $1,000, it's so expensive now. But everyone considers Philippine property expensive right now, but 10 years out from now, they're going to be saying Philippine property was so cheap that they wish they would have bought earlier. Another point I want to stress is don't focus on how cheap you can live. Focus on planning out your retirement right. When you're living on as little as possible, though others are content with it, a lot of people say you're not really living, you're just existing. So obviously, I don't have to say this, but the more you have, the better. That's how you're going to make the most out of your experience here. The thing is, if you're planning on retiring early and you're healthy, chances are you have a minimum of 20 years left. So it's crucial that you work out the numbers and diligently plan out your retirement, making sure that your retirement is going to at least last you 20 more years. Because there's people out there that retire early and then go back to work because they ran out of money. And that leads me to my next point. Keep yourself busy. I know that your foreseeable retirement is sitting back, relaxing, and laying at the beach. Sounds nice. But especially in your early retirement, pick up some hobbies, go out for walks, and keep a routine. Something that many expats don't mention is that things can get boring easily early, especially if you're living out in the province and you're retired already. My family always talks about part of the reason that people die early is because they feel like they have no more purpose. And so don't conduct yourself as if there's nothing to live for now that you're retired. More likely than not, if you're doing nothing, life will get boring, monotonous, and mundane. So pick up some hobbies when you get here and stick to a routine. Yet another thing to keep in mind is to not overspend. Overspending in the Philippines can be an easy thing to do for most expats. They think they have all the money in the world when they come here, so they spend on frivolous things. They go to the bars every day, they spend on tons of women, and they get talked into doing business ventures. Unless you're living on a big retirement, don't overspend on dumb things like this. I mean, drinking and women are one thing because that's done in any country you go to. But don't get talked into doing business ventures here. If there's one thing our family learned from personal experience the hard way is that most people here are not business savvy. The margins are terrible, and as the saying goes, if you want to make $1 million in the Philippines, bring $2 million. And so overall, those are just a few tips for planning an early retirement in the Philippines. So there you have it, Savvy Expats. Those are a few tips for planning an early retirement in the Philippines. If you found this video useful and you want to see more tips, let's get this video to 500 likes. Also, we are on the road to 10,000 subscribers, so if you feel like supporting the channel, be sure to subscribe. And so thank you for watching, Savvy Expats, and I'll see you in the next video. God bless.